Welcome to this explainer. Okay, if you've spent literally any time online looking at diet advice lately, you've definitely seen the massive debate raging about seed oils. It's wild out there. Today, we're putting on our clinical nutritionist hats. We're going to cut right through the extreme online noise and examine the actual objective science behind seed oils. We'll look at the biochemistry, the epidemiology, and honestly, the genuine scientific uncertainties without picking sides.
So here's the big question. Are these ubiquitous oils, which, by the way, are in nearly every processed food on the grocery store shelf and used in practically every restaurant kitchen, are they driving chronic disease, obesity, and inflammation? Or is this just another social media panic? In a landscape that's completely polarized between dismissive reassurance and terrifying absolute alarm, we really need to find the nuanced truth.
Here is our clinical assessment roadmap. We're going to cover the clinical intake, anatomy of a fat, the mainstream consensus, legitimate critiques, the food matrix, and finally, the prescription. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The clinical intake, ubiquity, and confusion.
To establish our baseline facts, we absolutely must look at these 5 specific oils: canola, soybean, sunflower, corn, and cottonseed. These are the primary fats used in commercial food production today. And because we're consuming them in such unbelievably high volumes compared to our ancestors, it is absolutely essential we know exactly what they're doing inside our bodies.
Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of a Fat, from seed to oil.
Now, unlike just squeezing an olive or churning some butter, getting oil from a tiny, rock-hard seed requires a seriously industrial process. It generally involves 3 steps: high heat extraction, then the use of chemical solvents like hexane just to maximize the yield, and finally extensive refining to bleach and deodorize the final product. But here's the catch. This highly efficient industrial process actually strips away some naturally occurring nutrients and antioxidants, and unfortunately, it produces certain oxidation byproducts right out of the gate.
To understand why this matters, we need to look at the simple structural difference between fats. Think of saturated fats, like butter or coconut oil, like sturdy, solid bricks. Because their chemical bonds are fully saturated, they are incredibly stable. On the flip side, the primary fats in seed oils are polyunsaturated fatty acids, or PUFAs. I want you to visualize these as long, flexible chains with very delicate, totally unprotected links. Now, this flexibility is exactly what keeps them liquid at room temperature. But those delicate links, they're highly, highly vulnerable to damage.
Section 3. Mainstream consensus. The established science.
So despite their fragile structure, there is a very good reason major health organizations have recommended these flexible fats for literally decades. We can't simply ignore established nutritional epidemiology, right? For decades, organizations have told us to replace saturated fats with polyunsaturated fats. Why? Because randomized controlled trials, which are the absolute gold standard of clinical research, consistently show that doing so actually reduces LDL cholesterol. On top of that, these replacements demonstrate measurable reductions in cardiovascular events. As a clinical nutritionist, I cannot simply dismiss this established evidence. It's real, it's measurable, and it really forms the bedrock of modern cardiometabolic advice.
All right, Section 4. Legitimate critiques, ratios, and heat.
However, science is always evolving, and we really have to look at the mechanistic critiques regarding what actually happens to those delicate PUFA chains under modern dietary conditions. The first major critique involves ratios. There are 2 main types of PUFAs we need to care about: omega-6 and omega-3. Historically speaking, human diets maintained an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of about 4:1. It was relatively balanced, giving our bodies exactly the raw materials needed for both inflammatory and anti-inflammatory cellular functions.
But today, we face a massive modern imbalance. Because seed oils are exceptionally high in a specific omega-6 called linoleic acid, and because they are quite literally everywhere, our current diets often sit at a staggering 20:1 ratio. We are absolutely flooded with omega-6s and essentially starved of omega-3s.
To understand why this matters clinically, think of your body's inflammatory response like a home security system. Now, inflammation isn't inherently bad, right? You need it to fight infections and heal injuries. A 4:1 ratio is a beautifully well-calibrated security alarm. It only goes off when there's an actual break-in. But a 20:1 ratio, that creates a hypersensitive alarm. All that excess omega-6 keeps the system completely on edge, potentially promoting a state of chronic, low-grade inflammation where the alarm is just constantly blaring at the slightest breeze.
The second major critique involves oxidation. Remember those long, flexible chains with the really delicate links we talked about? Well, oxidation is the process where those delicate links literally break down under the stress of high heat or light. When you subject seed oils to the extreme temperatures of deep fryers or just high-heat cooking, the PUFAs oxidize, producing highly reactive, potentially toxic compounds called aldehydes.
Now, it's absolutely crucial to be scientifically honest here. We know high heat produces these toxic compounds, and we know for a fact that they cause damage in animal models. But the real question is whether the quantities produced in normal, everyday, at-home cooking are biologically significant in humans. And honestly, the evidence right now is genuinely uncertain. Summarizing the scientific uncertainty here, while a commercial deep fryer reusing seed oil for days on end is clearly producing high levels of oxidized compounds, simply sauteing some vegetables in canola oil at home might not actually reach that same threshold of harm. We just don't have definitive human data to say for sure yet.
Section 5. The food matrix, the great confounding variable.
This brings us to the great confounding variable in nutritional science. We really have to figure out if the negative health associations we see in the general population come from the oil itself or the package it's delivered in. Epidemiological data is heavily confounded by what we call the food matrix. I mean, we don't typically just drink a glass of canola oil, right? We predominantly consume seed oils when they're hidden inside ultra-processed junk foods. Think deep-fried donuts, sugary pastries, and fast food. So when someone's health drastically improves after quitting seed oils, is it because they actually removed the oil? Or is it because they inadvertently stopped eating donuts, processed flour, and a ton of added sugar?
Section 6. The prescription, a measured clinical approach.
So, what's the takeaway? How do we actually navigate this paradox in our daily lives? Balancing the mainstream lipid hypothesis against the very real concerns of omega ratios and oxidation requires a really measured clinical approach. You don't need to panic, but you absolutely should be proactive. Here is my clinical nutritionist's verdict. First, prioritize minimally processed fats with favorable omega profiles, like extra virgin olive oil and avocado oil as your primary culinary fats. Second, radically minimize your intake of ultra-processed foods. Seriously, this solves the ratio problem and the food matrix problem in one fell swoop. And third, just avoid using highly refined seed oils for high-temperature cooking at home as a very reasonable precaution against oxidation.
I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. In our massive cultural rush to label a single ingredient, the seed oil, as the ultimate villain of modern health, are we entirely missing the larger, much more obvious danger of the heavily processed food matrix itself?